The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being through an invisible web of energy that flows between stars and through the hearts of warriors. But what happens when something tears through the fabric of space itself? Something that doesn't register in the Force, doesn't belong to any known species, and arrives with technology no Republic database can identify. The answer came screaming through the upper atmosphere of Kaylee on a night when 3 moons hung low over the Separatist-controlled world. Republic long-range sensors at the Rishi station first detected the anomaly. Not a hyperspace signature, not a meteor, something else entirely. A dimensional rupture that folded space like crumpled flimsy and spat out a dark, angular object trailing exotic energy that made their instruments scream warnings in colors they'd never seen before. The object plummeted through Kaylee's atmosphere at terminal velocity, its hull ablaze with re-entry fire, before disappearing into the Kumble jungle where Separatist droid factories churned out battle units by the thousands. What emerged from the smoking crater wasn't a pilot stumbling from a crashed ship. It was something that moved like liquid shadow through the wreckage, cape billowing in the superheated air, wide-eye lenses glowing in the darkness of a cowl that seemed designed to invoke primal fear. The figure stood motionless for 3.7 seconds. Republic intelligence would later analyze the intercepted droid footage frame by frame, before vanishing into the jungle canopy within human grace. Bruce Wayne's first conscious thought in this alien galaxy was tactical assessment. Armor integrity, 93%. Suit systems, recalibrating to unfamiliar energy signatures. Communications, no satellite network, no Oracle, no Alfred. Weapons, fully stocked. Intel, 0. His second thought was darker. He'd been pursuing the Riddler through an experimental Wayne Enterprises dimensional research lab when Nigma had triggered something he didn't understand. A machine built to detect parallel universes, now catastrophically overloading. Bruce remembered the sensation of reality tearing, of falling through colors that shouldn't exist, of his suit's failsafes screaming as quantum forces tried to unmake him at the molecular level. Now he stood in a jungle that smelled wrong. The air carried scents his detective's mind cataloged automatically. Ozone, industrial lubricant, burning plastoid, and something organic he couldn't place. Twin moons cast silver light through canopy leaves that looked almost Earth-like, but reflected bioluminescent patterns in the ultraviolet spectrum his cowl's sensors barely registered. Then he heard them. Mechanical voices speaking a language his cowl's translator struggled to process, followed by the distinctive whine of energy weapons charging. Batman melted into the shadows as a patrol of 4 humanoid machines rounded a massive tree root. They moved with military precision, their skeletal frames painted in desert tan, photoreceptors scanning the crash site with methodical sweeps. Not robots, too sophisticated. Droids? His mind supplied, though he didn't know where the term came from. Scanners detect impact site ahead. One of them vocalized in a tinny, almost comical voice. Command wants wreckage analyzed. Could be Republic infiltration. Roger, Roger, another responded. Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl. Their movements suggested combat programming, but their vocalizations indicated limited processing power. Weaknesses, exposed joints, optical sensors, probable central processing in the cranial unit. He cataloged a dozen ways to disable them in under 3 seconds. But first, he needed information. The lead droid's headpiece contained what looked like a communications array. Batman's suit had survived dimensional transit. His batarangs were crafted from memory metal alloys that could adapt to almost any impact scenario, and his hacking tools could infiltrate anything with a processor. Time to learn the rules of this new world. He moved like a whisper of wind through the undergrowth. The first droid never saw the line that wrapped around its neck joint and yanked it backward into the shadows. Batman caught it before the metal body hit the ground, his gauntlet fingers already interfacing with the access port behind its vocabulator. His suit's computer, still recalibrating to local technology, began the brute force decryption process. The other 3 droids spun around. Where'd be 1-471 go? Must have. 3 batarangs flew in perfect formation. One took the second droid's photoreceptor cluster. Another severed the hip actuator of the third. The fourth, modified mid-flight by Batman's wrist-mounted launcher, detonated in an electromagnetic pulse that fried the remaining droid's circuits before it could transmit an alert. Silence returned to the jungle. Batman dragged the disabled droid into deeper cover and crouched beside it, his cowl's display flooding with stolen data as his systems finally cracked the primitive encryption. Languages downloaded first: Galactic Basic, Huttese, Binary, followed by star charts that made his tactical mind reel. Thousands of inhabited systems: Galactic Republic, Separatist Alliance. Something called the Clone Wars raging across a scale that dwarfed anything Earth had ever known. And then he found the files on priority targets. Jedi Knights with laser swords, lightsabers, who could move objects with their minds and predict attacks before they happened. Sith Lords wielding the same power for conquest. And one name that appeared in file after file marked with the highest threat assessment: General Grievous. Supreme Commander of the Separatist Droid Army. Jedi Hunter. Four-armed cyborg with a collection of lightsabers taken from those he'd killed. Current location: Utapau system, though reports placed him across multiple sectors simultaneously. Batman stared at the holographic image projected from the droid's memory core. The creature was a nightmare of metal and bone. A skull-faced monster with digitigrade legs, a hunched posture that spoke of predatory power, and eyes that burned with cold hatred. The files detailed his kill count. Dozens of these force-wielding peacekeepers, murdered in single combat. Entire battalions destroyed by his strategic genius. The Separatists' most feared weapon. Bruce Wayne had spent his life hunting monsters. This galaxy had given him a new one. A distant sound made him freeze, the deep thrumming of engines approaching from the north. Heavy transports. More droids, probably an entire battalion converging on the crash site. Time to disappear. But first, one more piece of intel. He queried the droid's memory for Republic installations, safe zones, and any mention of this dimensional anomaly that brought him here. Nothing. Whatever had torn him from Gotham didn't register in their databases. He was a ghost in this galaxy. Good. Ghosts could move unseen. Batman triggered the droid's self-destruct protocol, leaving no evidence of his infiltration, and fired his grappling line into the canopy above. As he ascended into the bioluminescent jungle, leaving the approaching droid army to find only wreckage and shadows, one thought crystallized with absolute certainty. General Grievous was a monster, and Batman had come to this galaxy to do what he'd always done: hunt monsters until they stopped hurting people. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The hunt had begun. Away from Kaylee, Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in the Jedi Temple's intelligence center on Coruscant, reviewing holographic reports that made no tactical sense. His beard caught the blue glow of the projector as he cycled through the files again, searching for patterns that his Padawan training had taught him to recognize. 27 Separatist installations compromised in the past 72 hours, he said aloud, addressing the empty chamber. No Republic forces engaged. No casualties reported on our side. And yet entire droid battalions disabled. The hologram displayed smoking factories, sabotaged supply depots, and command centers left in ruins. Security footage showed only glimpses, a dark blur moving faster than tracking systems could follow, mechanical bodies falling in synchronized waves, and always the same calling card. Disabled droids arranged in patterns that Republic analysts couldn't decipher but agreed felt deliberate. A message, a signature. Anakin Skywalker's voice cut through his meditation. "You've been staring at those reports for 3 hours, Master." Obi-Wan turned to find his former Padawan leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. The young Jedi Knight had grown into his power. Perhaps too much power, too quickly, but that was a concern for another conversation. "Something is happening out there, Anakin. Something the Force isn't showing me clearly. Maybe it's just good intelligence work," Anakin suggested, stepping closer to examine the holograms. "Special Ops Team? Clone Commandos getting creative?" That's what Chancellor Palpatine suggested when I brought it to his attention this morning. Obi-Wan stroked his beard thoughtfully. But Commander Cody confirmed no Republic Special Forces are operating in those sectors. And look at the methodology. He enhanced one grainy security image. This isn't clone trooper tactics. It's surgical, almost artistic in its precision. The image showed a droid patrol frozen mid-step, each unit's photoreceptor destroyed by what appeared to be thrown projectiles with perfect accuracy. No energy signatures, no lightsaber burns. Just kinetic impacts that spoke of calculated trajectory and intimate knowledge of droid vulnerabilities. Could be a bounty hunter working against the Separatists, Anakin offered, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Bounty hunters work for credits. This operative is targeting strategic installations, power generators, communication hubs, droid manufacturing centers. Someone is systematically weakening Separatist infrastructure. Obi-Wan paused. Someone who understands warfare but fights like no warrior we've encountered. What neither Jedi knew was that Batman had spent the past 72 hours doing what he did best, detective work on a galactic scale. The abandoned Republic listening post on Rishi served as Batman's first base of operations. The clone troopers stationed there had been killed months ago during a Separatist raid, their bodies long since recovered, but the facility left offline. Forgotten in the chaos of galactic war, Batman had found it using stolen Separatist navigation data, and within 18 hours had restored partial power, established encrypted data taps into both Republic and Separatist communication networks, and begun constructing what Alfred would have called another obsessive project board. Except this board sprawled across 3 walls and contained intelligence on a war that spanned a galaxy. Bruce worked without sleep, his body sustained by combat rations scavenged from clone trooper supplies, and his mind racing through tactical problems that made Gotham's mob wars look quaint. The Clone Wars weren't gang disputes or masked lunatics. This was industrial-scale slaughter orchestrated by hidden hands. His detective instinct screamed that something was wrong with the fundamental nature of this conflict. The Republic, a democratic government corrupted by bureaucracy, fighting to preserve unity. The Separatists, corporate interests and exploited systems seeking independence. Both sides using armies that removed individual choice from warfare. Clone soldiers bred for combat, droid soldiers programmed for obedience. And at the center, these force-wielding Jedi serving as generals despite claiming to be peacekeepers. Batman had encountered his share of warrior monks on Earth. This felt different, compromised. But the tactical situation demanded immediate action. His intercepted communications painted a clear picture. General Grievous was the Separatists' apex predator. Every mention of the cyborg came with casualty reports, devastated battlefields, and Jedi confirmed killed in action. The creature was a force multiplier who could turn losing battles into Separatist victories through sheer brutality and tactical genius. In Gotham, Batman would have spent months preparing, investigating every angle, building a perfect trap. Here, in a galaxy at war, he had to adapt, strike fast, learn the enemy's patterns through engagement, use fear as a weapon before the enemy learned to fear him. The holoprojector displayed his primary target, General Grievous' last confirmed location, the Vasic system. The cyborg maintained a personal fortress there, a lair filled with trophies taken from murdered Jedi. Intelligence suggested Grievous visited the location between campaigns. Batman studied the fortress schematics he'd stolen from Separatist military networks. Heavy security, droid guards, multiple escape routes. The cyborg was paranoid, intelligent, and, according to intercepted medical files, suffering from chronic organ damage that required regular maintenance. Weakness. Everyone had weaknesses. But before he could move against Grievous directly, Batman needed field intelligence. He needed to see the monster in action, understand how it fought, how it thought. And fortunately, the Force had provided an opportunity. Republic transmissions indicated a Jedi strike team, 3 knights and a complement of clone troopers, were preparing to assault a Separatist command ship in the Forum system. The ship's commander, General Grievous himself. Batman checked his equipment one final time. The Batsuit had adapted well to this galaxy's technology. His armor could now deflect glancing blaster shots. His sensors had been recalibrated to detect energy weapons and droid signatures, and his hacking tools could interface with most Separatist systems. The utility belt contained enough explosive charges, EMPs, smoke grenades, and specialized batarangs to level a small army. He wasn't ready to face Grievous yet, but he could observe, learn, and perhaps save a few Jedi lives in the process. The stolen Separatist shuttle launched from Rishi Station with no transponder signal, no flight plan, just a shadow slipping through hyperspace toward a battlefield where legends would die. Batman had one rule: no killing. But in a galaxy where armies of droids fought armies of clones, where death came in industrial quantities, he wondered how long that rule could survive. He'd crossed dimensional barriers, crashed into a war beyond Earth's comprehension, and taken it upon himself to hunt the most dangerous combatant in the conflict. Alfred would have called it madness. Commissioner Gordon would have said he was in over his head. But Bruce Wayne had made a promise long ago, in an alley where his parents fell, that he would wage war on all criminals, all monsters, all those who preyed on the innocent. General Grievous was a monster. And monsters, no matter what galaxy they inhabited, always made the same mistake. 3,000 kilometers distant, General Grievous stood on the bridge, his mechanical hands gripping the command console, while his remaining organic eyes tracked the approaching Jedi shuttle with predatory focus. 3 life signs. General, a tactical droid reported. Jedi, as expected. They're requesting permission to dock in Bay 7 under false Republic diplomatic credentials. Grievous' mechanical lungs rattled with what might have been laughter. How predictable. The Jedi Council sends their warriors to capture me, believing I don't anticipate their every move. His 4 arms spread wide, each hand flexing with anticipation. Ready my Magna Guards. Seal all exits from Bay 7 once they've docked. We'll add 3 more lightsabers to my collection today. What neither the Jedi nor Grievous knew was that a 4th ship had followed them through hyperspace. A stolen Separatist shuttle broadcasting outdated clearance codes and piloted by someone who didn't appear in the Force's infinite web of connection. Batman docked his shuttle in Bay 12, 6 sections away from the Jedi's entry point. The docking bay was empty except for maintenance droids that paid no attention to what their sensors registered as a routine supply vessel. He moved through the ship's corridors like smoke, his cape billowing behind him as he navigated using schematics he'd memorized from stolen Separatist databases. The Invisible Hand was a maze of redundant systems, narrow passages designed for droids rather than organic beings, and security checkpoints that would have been formidable to Republic commandos. To someone who had infiltrated Ra's al Ghul's mountain fortress, Arkham Asylum's maximum security wing, and the Watchtower itself, it was almost disappointingly simple. He planted surveillance equipment at key junction points, tapping into the ship's internal communication network. The audio feed crackled to life in his cowl, broadcasting frantic droid transmissions. Jedi have engaged Magna Guards in Bay 7. General Grievous is en route. All units converge on. Batman was already moving. He'd seen the Jedi's route through the ship's architecture, traced their most likely path toward the bridge, and calculated exactly where Grievous would intercept them. Corridor 7 Alpha, 3 levels below the main command center. A killing box with reinforced bulkheads and limited escape routes. He arrived first. The corridor was wide enough for droid battalions to march 3 abreast, lit by cold white illumination that reflected off polished metal walls. Batman positioned himself in the shadows of a maintenance alcove, his presence invisible to both visual and electronic surveillance. His cowl sensors detected the approaching Jedi, 3 force signatures that registered as distortions in local electromagnetic fields, a phenomenon he'd need to study further. The Jedi rounded the corner in defensive formation. 2 humans, 1 male with a scarred face and twin lightsabers, 1 female with intricate tattoos and a green blade. Flanked a Twi'lek, whose blue skin seemed to shimmer in the harsh lighting. They moved with fluid grace, their weapons humming with contained energy that Batman's sensors measured at approximately 20,000 degrees Celsius. Plasma blades. Elegant, but they required proximity to be effective. Something's wrong, the Twi'lek Jedi said, her head-tails twitching. The force feels obscured here. It's Grievous, the scarred human replied. His presence disrupts our connection. Stay alert. Then the bulkheads behind them slammed shut with hydraulic finality. The Jedi spun, lightsabers raised, as the bulkheads ahead opened to reveal General Grievous in all his nightmarish glory. Batman's first thought, the intelligence files hadn't prepared him for the reality. Grievous stood over 2 meters tall, his body a grotesque fusion of cybernetics and whatever organic components remained beneath the armor plating. His skull-like mask turned toward the Jedi with mechanical precision, eyes burning yellow in the shadows. For arms hung at his sides, each hand reaching for the lightsaber's maglock to his belt. Jedi, Grievous' voice rasped through a vocabulator that added layers of menace to every syllable. Your futile attempt to capture me ends as all such attempts do, with your lightsabers joining my collection. For blades ignited simultaneously. Blue, green, yellow, purple. The corridor exploded with color as Grievous spun his weapons in a defensive pattern that created a wall of plasma death. The Jedi attacked with coordinated precision. The scarred warrior led with aggressive strikes, his twin sabers weaving patterns that should have overwhelmed any opponent. The female Jedi supported from the right flank, her blades seeking openings in Grievous' guard. The Twi'lek hung back, using the Force to hurl debris and create tactical opportunities. It wasn't enough. Grievous fought with mechanical efficiency that transcended normal combat. His cybernetic body moved faster than organic reflexes should allow, his 4 arms attacking and defending simultaneously from impossible angles. He parried the scarred Jedi's strikes while simultaneously countering the female's flank assault, his yellow lightsaber spinning so fast it created an afterimage blur. Your Jedi tricks won't save you, Grievous snarled, pressing forward. I was trained in your arts by Count Dooku himself. Batman watched from the shadows, his tactical mind dissecting every movement. Grievous was a perfect killing machine. No wasted motion, no emotional vulnerability, just calculated murder perfected through thousands of hours of combat experience. But machines had patterns, and patterns could be exploited. The female Jedi overextended on a thrust. Grievous' purple lightsaber caught her blade and twisted with brutal leverage, sending her weapon flying. His free hand shot out and grabbed her throat, lifting her off the ground. The other Jedi desperately tried to create an opening, but Grievous simply spun, using the female as a shield. Watch as your companion dies, Grievous growled. Batman moved. The EMP batarang struck Grievous' right shoulder joint at the exact moment his grip tightened on the Jedi's throat. The electromagnetic pulse fried the servos controlling that arm, causing his hand to spasm open. The female Jedi dropped, gasping, as Batman's grappling line wrapped around her waist and yanked her backward into the shadows. Grievous spun toward the source of the attack, all 4 lightsabers searching for this new threat. What? 3 smoke grenades detonated simultaneously, filling the corridor with dense black clouds that completely obscured visual sensors. The Jedi's foresight would pierce it, but Grievous' purely technological vision went blind. There's someone else here, the scarred Jedi shouted. I can't sense them in the Force. Impossible, Grievous' voice echoed through the smoke. No one can hide from my sensors. Batman's thermal vision painted the scene in cold blues and hot reds. He could see Grievous' mechanical body blazing with heat signatures from overtaxed servos, the Jedi clustered together in defensive formation, and the network of STRNG a different load-bearing joint. The ceiling groaned. Sparks rained down as support beams buckled. The corridors collapsing, the Twi'lek Jedi realized. Move! Batman's voice cut through the chaos. Cold, mechanical, filtered through his cowl's modulator to sound inhuman. Run. The Jedi didn't need to be told twice. They retreated toward the sealed bulkhead as Batman's explosive charge detonated against the locking mechanism. The metal door blasted inward, creating an escape route. Grievous roared with mechanical fury, his lightsabers cutting through smoke as he charged toward where Batman's voice had originated. But Batman was already gone, his grappling line pulling him up through a maintenance shaft he'd identified earlier. The corridor's ceiling gave way with a shriek of tortured metal, tons of debris crashing down between Grievous and the fleeing Jedi. Batman sealed the maintenance shaft behind him and triggered 3 more explosive charges planted throughout the ship during his infiltration. Not enough to destroy the invisible hand. He wasn't ready to commit mass murder of the droid crew, but enough to disable propulsion, communications, and life support for 2 hours. By the time Grievous engineering teams restored functionality, the Jedi would be long gone, and General Grievous would know something was hunting him, something he couldn't sense, something that fought with tactics he'd never encountered. Batman disappeared into the maintenance tunnels, heading for his shuttle. Behind him, Grievous' enraged roars echoed through the damaged ship, the cyborg general tearing through debris with mechanical strength, searching for an enemy who had already become a ghost. In his fortress on Vasek, Count Dooku felt a disturbance through his connection to the dark side. Something had entered the war, something that didn't belong. His master would need to know. The hunt, Batman reflected as his shuttle launched into hyperspace, had moved from reconnaissance to engagement. Now General Grievous knew he was being hunted. The question was whether the monster would run or fight. Batman was counting on the latter. The Jedi Temple's council chamber had seen countless strategic briefings during the Clone Wars, but the emergency session called by Obi-Wan Kenobi carried an unusual weight. 12 Jedi Masters sat in contemplative silence as the holographic recording played for the 3rd time, showing grainy security footage from the invisible hand. Master Yoda's ears twitched as the shadowy figure, barely visible through the smoke and chaos, executed movements that no Republic database could identify. Save the strike team, this mysterious warrior did. Yet visible in the Force, they are not. Impossible, Master Windu stated flatly. All living things exist within the Force. Even the Hutts, even droids to some degree through their programming. But this. He gestured at the frozen hologram, showing Batman's silhouette against the explosion. This is an absence, a void where something should exist. Obi-Wan stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back in his characteristic, thoughtful pose. Masters, I've interviewed the 3 Jedi who encountered this being. Knight 10 describes a figure in dark armor who moved faster than his eyes could track. Knight Veal heard a voice, mechanically modulated, deliberately inhuman. Knight Orla confirmed the being used technology, not the Force, yet displayed combat awareness that rivaled Jedi precognition. Or exceeded it. Anakin interjected from where he stood beside his former master. Several council members shot him disapproving looks, but he continued undeterred. The strike team was seconds from death. This operative calculated the exact moment to intervene, disabled Grievous' primary attack arm, and collapsed an entire corridor while ensuring no Jedi casualties. That's not just skill, that's genius. Dangerous, this genius may be, Yoda warned. Unknown their motives are. Help the Jedi today, tomorrow perhaps not. Master PLO Kuhn leaned forward, his masked face unreadable. There's another consideration. If this being can hide from the Force, the Sith could be using similar technology. We may be witnessing a new weapon in Dooku's arsenal. I disagree, Obi-Wan said firmly. This operative specifically targeted Separatist installations before engaging Grievous. They've destroyed droid factories, sabotaged communication networks, and repeatedly struck against Dooku's forces. If they serve the Sith, their actions make no strategic sense. Anakin crossed his arms. So what do? Send a thank you note to a ghost. Mace Windu stood, his imposing presence filling the chamber. We find them. Whatever this being is, they've inserted themselves into a galactic conflict they don't understand. If they continue operating independently, they could compromise Republic operations or inadvertently aid Separatist strategies. Or they could win battles we're currently losing, Anakin countered. 3 Jedi are alive because of this operative. How many more could be saved if we worked with them instead of treating them as a threat? The debate continued, but Obi-Wan's mind had already moved to tactical considerations. Whoever this mysterious warrior was, they operated with the skill of a Mandalorian, the strategic mind of a Jedi general, and the moral code that suggested they weren't simply a mercenary or Sith agent. And they were specifically hunting General Grievous, perhaps the only being in the galaxy who'd made that particular monster afraid. He needed to find this operative, talk to them, understand their goals before the Jedi Order made an enemy of a potential ally. 6 parsecs away on the planet Utapau, Batman perched on the rim of a massive sinkhole city, watching the Separatist command center through enhanced optics that made the sprawling complex look close enough to touch. The past 48 hours had been productive. He'd tracked Grievous movements through intercepted communications, identified 3 of the cyborg's regular bases, and compiled a psychological profile that would have impressed even Dr. Harleen Quinzel. General Grievous was a monster, yes, but more specifically, he was a monster driven by pain, rage, and an inferiority complex focused on Force users. The medical files Batman had stolen revealed the truth. Grievous had once been a living being named Kaimin Jai-Shilul, a Kaleesh warrior of legendary skill. Catastrophic injuries and Separatist manipulation had transformed him into a cyborg, leaving only organic eyes, brain, and a few vital organs. The transformation had broken him psychologically. Grievous collected lightsabers not just as trophies, but as validation. Proof that even without the Force, he could defeat those who wielded it. His fighting style emphasized mechanical superiority over organic limitation. His brutal efficiency masked deep-seated fear that he was nothing more than a droid with delusions of personhood. Batman understood fear. He'd built his entire crusade around it, and he knew exactly how to weaponize it against someone like Grievous. The Utapau installation was heavily fortified. Droid patrols marched in predictable patterns along the city's multiple levels. Spider droids clung to vertical walls like metal arachnids, and vulture droid starfighters circled overhead. Security was tight, but tight security meant patterns, and patterns meant vulnerabilities. Batman had spent the last 6 hours mapping every patrol route, every shift change, every blind spot in sensor coverage. Now, as Utapau's sun set and cast long shadows across the sinkhole's interior, he began his infiltration. The grappling line fired silently, magnetic grip catching on a support beam 3 levels down. Batman dropped into the shadows, his cape spreading to control his descent. He landed without sound on a maintenance platform, disabled the security camera with a precisely thrown batarang, and slipped through a ventilation grate that led deeper into the complex. The facility's layout matched stolen schematics perfectly. Batman navigated through service tunnels that droids rarely patrolled, planting surveillance equipment at key junction points and tapping into the base's central computer network. Within 20 minutes, he had access to command-level security feeds, communication logs, and, most importantly, Grievous' personal schedule. The cyborg was currently in his meditation chamber. The term meditation was used loosely. Security footage showed Grievous alone with his collection of lightsabers, practicing forms with mechanical precision, his movements growing increasingly violent as he worked through whatever passed for emotions in his traumatized psyche. Batman watched through the hacked camera feed. Grievous spun 4 lightsabers in complex patterns, each blade humming with deadly energy. The cyborg's movements were perfect. No wasted motion, no openings, just pure mechanical efficiency refined through countless battles and the training Count Dooku had provided. But Batman saw the patterns. The rhythm, the split-second delay when Grievous switched from offensive to defensive posturing, the over-reliance on his upper right arm for power strikes, the way his lower left hand always returned to guard position first, suggesting that arm servos were slightly slower than the others. Weaknesses. Everyone had them. Batman typed commands into his wrist-mounted computer, uploading a specialized virus into the base's computer network. Not enough to trigger security alerts, just a subtle corruption of the facility's environmental controls. In 3 hours, when Grievous retired to his personal quarters, the temperature would drop 10 degrees below standard. The humidity would increase by 15%, and the atmospheric pressure would shift just enough to cause discomfort in organic components. Small things, unnoticeable to droids, but to a cyborg with failing organic organs, it would be psychological warfare at its finest. Grievous would feel vulnerable in his own fortress. Unsafe, hunted, because that's what Batman wanted him to feel. The more paranoid Grievous became, the more mistakes he'd make. And mistakes were how monsters died. Batman continued through the base, learning its secrets, mapping its defenses, and leaving his mark. A batarang wedged in a support beam where Grievous would eventually see it. Explosives planted in locations the cyborg might retreat to during an attack. Backdoors created in the security network that would allow Batman to return whenever he chose. He was in Grievous' fortress for 4 hours and 23 minutes. In that time, he planted 17 surveillance devices, corrupted 3 security systems, compiled detailed profiles on the cyborg's command staff, and stole complete medical records that detailed every weakness in Grievous' cybernetic body. When Batman finally extracted through the same ventilation system he'd entered, leaving no trace of his presence except those deliberate calling cards, General Grievous remained in his meditation chamber, unaware that his fortress had been violated by a predator who hunted from the shadows. But later that night, when Grievous retired to his quarters and felt the subtle environmental changes, when he noticed the batarang embedded in the beam outside his window, when he realized someone had been inside his sanctum without triggering a single alarm, the cyborg general would understand what it meant to be prey. Batman disappeared into Utapau's night, his stolen shuttle launching toward the stars with no transponder signal, no flight plan, just another shadow moving through a galaxy at war. In the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi stood before the holographic star map, tracking reports of Separatist installations compromised, security breaches, and the mysterious operatives' pattern of movement. He was close to determining their next target. In the Sith meditation chamber on Coruscant, Darth Sidious felt the disturbance through the dark side, a presence that shouldn't exist, interfering with plans centuries in the making. And in a cave on Utapau, surrounded by stolen equipment and holographic displays showing everything he'd learned about this galaxy, Bruce Wayne sat in the darkness and planned his next move. General Grievous was learning fear. Soon, he would learn pain. And ultimately, he would learn what every monster in every galaxy eventually discovered. The Jedi Temple's meditation gardens offered a rare moment of peace in a galaxy consumed by war. Obi-Wan Kenobi walked the carefully manicured paths, his mind troubled by questions that seemed to multiply faster than answers could emerge. The Force swirled around him in its usual infinite patterns, but there remained that strange absence, a void where something significant moved through the galaxy, unseen and unknowable. "You're troubled, Master Kenobi." Anakin's voice came from behind, the young Jedi Knight approaching with his characteristic confident stride. "I can feel it from 3 levels away." "Then I'm projecting more than I intended," Obi-Wan replied with a slight smile. "Walk with me, Anakin. I need your perspective on something." They moved deeper into the gardens, where ancient trees transplanted from 1,000 worlds created a canopy that filtered Coruscant's artificial light. Obi-Wan stopped beside a fountain, its water flowing in patterns that reminded him of the Force itself. Constant, interconnected, touching everything. "The Council wants me to find this mysterious operative," Obi-Wan said quietly. "Track them down, bring them before the Jedi for questioning. Master Windu believes they represent a potential threat to Republic operations." "And you disagree?" Anakin stated rather than asked. "I'm uncertain. This being has saved Jedi lives, crippled Separatist operations, and demonstrated a moral code that suggests they're not working for the Sith. Yet they operate completely outside our oversight, answer to no authority, and their methods." Obi-Wan paused, choosing his words carefully. "They're brutal, Anakin. Efficient and non-lethal from what we can determine, but they fight as if the war is personal. As if they've made Grievous their sole target regardless of larger strategic considerations." Anakin leaned against the fountain's edge. "Maybe that's exactly what we need. Someone who isn't bogged down by council politics or Republic bureaucracy. Someone who just acts. Obi-Wan studied his former Padawan with concern. That sounds dangerously close to advocating for vigilante justice. I'm advocating for results, Anakin countered. 3 Jedi are alive because this operative ignored proper channels and took decisive action. How many more lives could be saved if we had someone who could move without waiting for Senate approval or Jedi authorization? And how many lives could be lost if that someone decided our methods were too slow? Obi-Wan shook his head. Power without accountability is tyranny, Anakin, even if the intentions are pure. Their debate was interrupted by Commander Cody's urgent transmission. Obi-Wan activated his comlink, and the clone commander's filtered voice crackled through. General Kenobi, you're needed in the command center immediately. We've intercepted a priority communication from General Grievous. You need to see this, sir. Minutes later, Obi-Wan and Anakin stood in the command center surrounded by holographic displays showing the intercepted transmission. What they saw defied all tactical logic. General Grievous stood in what appeared to be his personal quarters on Utapau, his mechanical frame rigid with barely controlled rage. Behind him, the walls were scarred with lightsaber marks, evidence of violent destruction. And embedded in the support beam, clearly visible through the window, was a black metal object shaped like a stylized bat. To whoever is hunting me, Grievous' voice rasped through the transmission, each word dripping with mechanical hatred. You think you can terrorize a terror? You believe your pathetic tricks will make me fear you. The cyborg's 4 hands clenched into fists. I am General Grievous. I have killed hundreds of Jedi. I have crushed Republic armies across 1,000 systems. And you hide in shadows like a coward. The transmission showed Grievous grabbing the batarang from the wall, examining it with his photoreceptors. But I know you're watching. I know you're listening. So I offer you this challenge. Meet me in honorable combat. Come to my fortress on Vasek. Face me directly, warrior to warrior, and I will add your bones to my collection alongside the Jedi who thought themselves superior to mere machines. The transmission ended. The command center fell silent. Well, Anakin said into the quiet, I guess he knows he's being hunted. Obi-Wan stared at the frozen image of Grievous holding the batarang. This is fascinating. The operative deliberately left evidence of their infiltration. They wanted Grievous to know his sanctuary had been violated. It's psychological warfare. It's also dangerous, Commander Cody observed, his scarred face grave. Grievous doesn't issue challenges lightly. Either he's genuinely afraid and trying to regain control of the situation, or he's setting a trap to draw out this operative. Probably both, Anakin suggested. Grievous has an ego the size of a Star Destroyer. Being hunted by someone he can't track or anticipate must be driving him insane, which means he's making mistakes. He turned to Obi-Wan with sudden intensity. Master, we should go to Vasek. If this operative is watching Grievous communications like we are, they might actually accept the challenge. We could finally make contact. Obi-Wan considered the proposal. The Jedi Council had authorized him to pursue this mysterious warrior, and Vasek represented an opportunity. But it also represented a potential catastrophe. If Grievous was setting a trap, both the operative and any Jedi who intervened could be walking into a kill zone. We'll need backup, Obi-Wan decided. Alert the 212th. Plot a course for Vasek, but we maintain stealth approach. If this meeting happens, I want to observe before making contact. You think they'll actually show up? Cody asked. They've infiltrated Separatist command ships, sabotaged fortified installations, and saved Jedi from certain death while remaining completely undetected, Obi-Wan replied. This operative is clearly skilled enough to recognize an obvious trap, but they're also committed to hunting Grievous with a singularity of purpose that borders on obsession. He paused. Yes, Commander. I believe they'll show. The question is whether they're walking into a trap or setting one of their own. As the Republic cruiser prepared to depart for Vasek, none of them noticed the passive sensor sweep that originated from a stealth-configured shuttle parked in Coruscant's lower levels. Batman sat in the pilot's seat, reviewing the same intercepted transmission, his wide-eye lenses reflecting the holographic image of Grievous' challenge. Alfred's voice echoed in his memory. Master Bruce, You have a particular talent for accepting challenges that any reasonable person would decline. Batman's fingers moved across his tactical computer, analyzing Vasek's planetary defenses, Grievous' fortress layout, and the probability that the Jedi would also respond to this obvious provocation. The cyborg was making it personal, trying to draw him out through appeals to honor and direct combat. Grievous didn't understand that Batman had no honor in the traditional sense. No warrior's code about fair fights or single combat. He had one rule: no killing. But within that rule, he would use every tactical advantage, every piece of technology, every psychological weapon available. The challenge was a trap. Obviously, Grievous would have the fortress rigged with redundant security, backup droid battalions, and escape routes if the confrontation went poorly. The cyborg had survived this long by never fighting fair, never taking unnecessary risks, and always ensuring he had overwhelming advantage before engaging enemies. But traps worked both ways. And Batman had spent the past week learning everything about Grievous' fortress, his psychology, his combat patterns, and his weaknesses. If the cyborg wanted to draw him out into open confrontation, Batman would oblige, but on his terms, at his chosen moment, and with preparations that would turn Grievous' stronghold into a cage. He typed a single command into his computer, sending an encrypted response through channels he'd established in the Separatist communication network. The message was brief, untraceable, and deliberately cryptic. I accept your challenge, but monsters don't get to choose how they die. The Bat. The transmission fired into hyperspace. Bounce continue from Chapter 6 to 10, then concluding through a dozen relay points before arriving at Grievous' fortress on Vasek. Within minutes, it would reach the cyborg general, and the game would escalate to its next phase. Batman began final preparations for what would either be the decisive confrontation or the beginning of a more complex hunt. His armor was calibrated, his weapons were loaded, his escape routes were planned, and most importantly, his understanding of the enemy was complete. General Grievous wanted a warrior's duel. Batman would give him something far worse: a detective's methodical dismantling of everything that made the cyborg feel powerful, safe, and in control. The Jedi could observe, intervene if necessary. Batman had worked with other heroes before: the Justice League, the Titans, even the morally flexible members of the Suicide Squad, when situations demanded it. If the Jedi proved to be allies in stopping Grievous' reign of terror, he would accept their assistance. But if they tried to stop him, tried to impose their authority or their rules on his mission, Batman had contingency plans for gods. Jedi wouldn't be any different. He fired up the shuttle's engines and set course for Vasek, leaving Coruscant behind. The Clone Wars had brought him to this galaxy. General Grievous had given him purpose within its chaos. And now, on a fortress world designed for murder, Batman would prove that some hunters couldn't be escaped. No matter how far you ran, no matter how many weapons you wielded, no matter how much fear you inspired in others. Because fear, in the end, was just another tool. And Batman had been perfecting its use for a very long time.
Count Dooku stood in his meditation chamber on Sereno, the ancient Sith holocrons casting crimson light across his aristocratic features. The holographic projection before him showed General Grievous pacing within his Vasek fortress, all four mechanical arms gesticulating with barely controlled fury. This operative has compromised 3 of our major installations, infiltrated my personal quarters, and now openly mocks me through encrypted communications. Grievous snarled. I want every available droid battalion redirected to Vasek. I want orbital defenses at maximum capacity. When this fool arrives, I will tear them apart and broadcast their death across every Republic channel. Calm yourself, General, Dooku replied with measured patience that barely concealed his own curiosity. Your rage makes you predictable. This being, whoever or whatever they are, has demonstrated tactical sophistication that rivals our best strategists. They saved 3 Jedi from your grasp, yet they operate independently of the Republic. They hide from the Force itself, yet they fight with purpose and precision. This suggests something far more complex than a simple mercenary or Republic agent. Then what are they? Grievous demanded. Dooku's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. An anomaly. A variable that neither I nor my master anticipated. And anomalies, General, are either opportunities or threats. We must determine which. He leaned forward slightly. You issued your challenge publicly. The Jedi will certainly respond, Kenobi, most likely, perhaps young Skywalker as well. Use this to our advantage. Let them come to Vasek. Let them witness what happens when someone challenges you on your own ground. And if this mysterious operative appears, I will destroy them, Grievous finished. No, Dooku corrected sharply. You will capture them. I want to know what technology allows them to hide from the Force. I want to understand their origins, their capabilities, their weaknesses. Dead enemies tell us nothing, General. But prisoners reveal everything. Grievous' mechanical breathing rattled with frustration, but he nodded. As you command, Count. But if they resist capture? Then by all means, add their weapon to your collection. Dooku terminated the transmission and stood in silence, extending his awareness through the dark side of the Force. The currents of fate and probability swirled with unusual turbulence, suggesting significant events approaching, events that would reshape the Clone Wars in ways he couldn't yet perceive. His master, Darth Sidious, had felt it too. The disturbance. The presence that shouldn't exist. And in their most recent communication, Sidious had given Dooku explicit instructions. Identify this threat, assess its potential, and either convert it to their purposes or eliminate it before it disrupted the grand plan. But Dooku sensed something deeper. The dark side whispered warnings that made even his disciplined mind uneasy. This wasn't a random variable. This was something that had entered their galaxy with purpose, with skills honed in conflicts beyond the Jedi's comprehension, and with a determination that reminded him uncomfortably of the most dangerous Jedi he'd ever known, Qui-Gon Jinn, who had also followed his own code regardless of Council approval. Dooku ignited his crimson lightsaber, the curved hilt fitting perfectly in his aristocratic grip, and moved through the Makashi forms with practiced grace. Whatever was coming to Vasek, he would be ready. Perhaps he would even journey there himself if the situation warranted direct Sith intervention. After all, the best way to understand a weapon was to test it against a worthy opponent. The Republic cruiser Negotiator dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vasek system, maintaining stealth profile as Obi-Wan Kenobi studied tactical displays in the command center. The fortress world hung before them. A planet of rocky continents, turbulent oceans, and minimal atmosphere, chosen by Grievous precisely because its harsh conditions deterred casual visitors. Long-range scans confirmed significant droid presence, Commander Cody reported, his helmet reflecting the blue glow of tactical screens. At least 4 battalions of battle droids, plus what looks like destroyer droids, Magna Guards, and several spider droids. The fortress itself is heavily shielded. Anakin stood beside his former master, arms crossed, studying the planetary defenses with tactical appreciation. Grievous isn't taking chances. He's turned the entire fortress into a kill zone. Anyone who accepts his challenge is walking into a death trap. Which means our mysterious operative either recognizes the trap and has a plan to counter it, Obi-Wan mused, or they're driven by something stronger than tactical caution. He turned to Cody. Deploy reconnaissance probe droids. I want real-time surveillance of the fortress and surrounding terrain. And prepare a stealth shuttle. Anakin and I will make planetfall separately from the main force. You're going down there? Cody's voice carried clear concern even through his helmet's vocoder. If the operative shows, we need to make contact before Grievous kills them or they do something that escalates this situation beyond control, Obi-Wan explained. The Council wants answers. the only way to get them is through direct communication. Or direct observation of how they fight, Anakin added with barely concealed eagerness. We could learn something from their tactics. Obi-Wan shot him a warning look. We're there to observe and intervene if necessary, not to study combat techniques. Can't we do both? Before Obi-Wan could respond, the tactical officer interrupted urgently. General Kenobi, we're detecting an unauthorized vessel approaching Vasek from the opposite vector. Small craft, no transponder signal, advanced stealth configuration. It's already entering the atmosphere. Obi-Wan and Anakin exchanged glances. Our operative, Obi-Wan said quietly. They're actually doing it. Cody, accelerate our deployment. I want boots on the ground within the hour. Anakin, with me. As they moved toward the hangar bay, Anakin couldn't suppress a slight smile. You know, Master, there's something almost Jedi-like about this operative's approach. Single-minded dedication to stopping a threat. Willingness to face overwhelming odds. Operating outside official authority for the greater good. Or something almost Sith-like, Obi-Wan countered. Obsessive fixation on a target. Use of fear as a weapon. Ends justifying means. He paused at the shuttle's boarding ramp. That's what concerns me, Anakin. We don't know who or what this being truly is. Their actions have been beneficial so far, but good tactics don't always indicate good intentions. They boarded the stealth shuttle, and as it launched toward Vasek's stormy surface, Obi-Wan reached out through the Force, trying once more to sense this mysterious operative. As always, there was only absence, a void where a presence should be, like a silhouette cut from reality itself. On the planet below, General Grievous stood on the fortress's main balcony, his mechanical eyes scanning the dark skies. Somewhere up there, his hunter approached. And when they arrived, every droid, every weapon, every tactical advantage would be focused on one goal, proving that General Grievous bowed to no one. Batman's shuttle cut through Vasek's atmosphere at an angle calculated to minimize sensor detection. The planet's magnetic interference provided natural cover, and the modifications he'd made to the stolen Separatist vessel allowed it to masquerade as routine supply traffic until the final approach. He'd spent the 3-hour hyperspace journey reviewing everything he knew about Grievous Fortress. The structure was built into a mountainside overlooking a volcanic chasm, with multiple levels descending deep into the rock. Primary entrance heavily guarded. Auxiliary entrances sealed but vulnerable to shaped charges. Underground passages connecting to geothermal vents. Escape routes leading to a private hangar bay. The fortress was a tactical nightmare designed by someone who understood defensive warfare. But Batman had infiltrated worse. Ra's al Ghul's League of Assassins had fortresses spanning continents. The Batcave itself was an underground fortress. And he'd spent years learning to turn defensive strongholds into prisons for those who relied on them. The shuttle touched down 3 kilometers from the fortress, hidden in a ravine where volcanic heat signatures would mask its thermal profile. Batman emerged into Vasek's harsh environment, thin atmosphere requiring his suit supplemental oxygen, high winds carrying volcanic ash, and rocky terrain that would challenge even his enhanced mobility. He moved toward the fortress with methodical precision, his cape billowing in the toxic winds, his cowl sensors painting the landscape in enhanced tactical overlay. Droid patrols marched in predictable patterns. Spider droids clung to cliff faces. Sniper positions covered obvious approach routes. But Batman had no intention of using obvious approaches. He fired his grappling line toward a rock formation 300 meters above, the magnetic grip catching on mineral-rich stone. As he ascended, he planted remote charges at strategic points, not for immediate use, but for contingencies. One of the first lessons he'd learned from his training with the League: always prepare multiple exit strategies before entering the kill zone. The fortress loomed above him, a dark mass of angular architecture designed to intimidate. Good. Intimidation worked both ways. And by the time this night ended, Grievous would understand what it meant to face something that refused to be intimidated. Batman reached a ventilation shaft, one of 17 he'd identified during his previous reconnaissance, and began the infiltration. Behind him, unknown to him, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker were positioning themselves on a ridge overlooking the fortress, watching through macrobinoculars as the dark figure disappeared into the structure. "He's actually going in," Anakin whispered, both impressed and concerned. "So it would appear," Obi-Wan replied, his hand unconsciously moving to his lightsaber. "May the Force be with him. He's going to need it." Inside the fortress, General Grievous sat in his command center, watching security feeds that showed absolutely nothing unusual. His mechanical fingers drummed against the armrest with metallic clicking sounds. The hunter was coming. He could feel it, even without the Force. The same instinct that had kept him alive through 1,000 battles now screamed that he was being watched, stalked, hunted by something that moved through his fortress like smoke through a ventilation system. "All units to maximum alert," Grievous commanded. "Seal all exits. Activate internal sensors. And bring me the Magna Guards. When this fool reveals themselves, I want them surrounded, captured, and brought to me alive." "Roger, Roger," the tactical droid responded. What none of them knew. Not Grievous, not the Jedi watching from outside, not even Count Dooku monitoring events from Sereno, was that Batman had been inside the fortress for 17 minutes already, moving through maintenance tunnels, disabling sensors, planting surveillance equipment, and preparing the battlefield with methodical precision. He wasn't there to accept Grievous' challenge on the cyborg's terms. He was there to turn the entire fortress into a weapon aimed at its owner. And the trap was about to snap shut. Through the gas-filled corridors, his thermal vision rendering the toxic fog transparent. The nerve gas actually provided additional cover. Droids couldn't see through it any better than organic eyes could, and Grievous sensors were now blind in a third of the fortress. Batman moved deeper into the structure, following the path he'd mapped during his previous reconnaissance. The fortress's command center erupted in controlled chaos as security alerts flashed across multiple displays. General Grievous leaned forward in his command throne, his mechanical eyes narrowing as he processed the incoming data. "Report," he snarled at the tactical droid. "Sir, we're experiencing cascading system failures across sections 7 through 12. Internal sensors going offline in sequence. Communication networks experiencing unexplained lag. And..." The droid paused, its photoreceptors flickering with what might have been confusion. 3 battle droid squads have failed to report from their patrol routes. "Not failed to report," Grievous corrected coldly. "They've been neutralized. Our hunter is inside the fortress." He stood, all 4 hands reaching for the lightsaber's maglock to his belt. "Seal the command center. Deploy all Magna Guards to patrol the primary corridors. And route all security feeds to my personal display. I want to see this operative when they make their move." "Yes, General." But the security feeds showed nothing. Corridor after corridor displayed only empty passages, deactivated battle droids lying in carefully arranged patterns, and the occasional glimpse of something dark and fast moving through the edge of frame before disappearing. Grievous watched with growing frustration. This operative fought like no opponent he'd encountered. Not with the Force's mystical powers, not with overwhelming firepower, but with perfect understanding of his fortress's blind spots and systematic dismantling of his technological advantages. Every droid squad sent to investigate reported static. Every sensor cluster activated showed only shadows. And with each passing minute, more of the fortress fell under the intruder's control. "This is impossible," the tactical droid stated. No single operative could disable this many units without triggering defensive protocols. Nothing is impossible, Grievous growled. Only improbable. This hunter has studied us, learned our patterns, identified our weaknesses. They're turning my own fortress against me. His mechanical hands clenched. Then we change the game. Activate Protocol Omega. Flood sections 7 through 12 with nerve gas. If conventional sensors can't find them, we'll force them into the open. But General, nerve gas will only affect organic. Exactly, Grievous interrupted. This operative is clearly organic, despite their technological capabilities. The gas will either kill them or force them to reveal their position when they seek breathable atmosphere. Either outcome is acceptable. The fortress's environmental systems began pumping toxic gas into the compromised sections. On the monitors, green mist filled the corridors, creating a deadly fog that would incapacitate or kill any organic being within minutes. Grievous allowed himself a mechanical approximation of a smile. Now we wait. Batman had anticipated the gas attack. His cowl's environmental sensors had detected the atmospheric changes 3 seconds before the vents opened, giving him time to seal his suit's respiratory system and activate the rebreather built into his armor. The bat suit was designed to function in Gotham's chemical plants, Scarecrow's fear toxin clouds, and Poison Ivy's botanical nightmares. Separatist nerve agents were almost mundane by comparison. He-Tiv wasn't the command center where Grievous waited. That would be too predictable, too much playing into the cyborg's preferred scenario of direct confrontation. Instead, Batman headed for the fortress's power core. The reactor chamber was 3 levels below the command center, a massive cylindrical room housing the geothermal converter that powered the entire facility. Security here was minimal, after all, who would target the power supply when the enemy commander was floors above? Someone who understood that taking away an enemy's advantages was more effective than meeting them head-on. Batman planted charges around the primary power conduits, carefully calibrated to disable rather than destroy. He wasn't here to commit mass murder of the droid garrison. He was here to strip Grievous of every tactical advantage, every technological superiority, every reason to feel safe behind walls and armies. As he worked, his cowl's passive sensors detected movement above. 2 signatures that didn't match droid thermal profiles. Organic beings, force-sensitive based on the electromagnetic distortions they generated. The Jedi had arrived, just as he'd predicted. Good. Let them observe. Let them see what happened when monsters were held accountable by someone who didn't wait for Council approval or Senate authorization. Batman triggered the first sequence of charges. Throughout the fortress, lights flickered and died as backup power struggled to compensate. Emergency lighting cast everything in crimson shadows. And in the command center, General Grievous roared with mechanical fury. Find them. Kill them. I want their head mounted on. The command center's doors exploded inward. But it wasn't Batman who entered. It was 4 Magna Guards, their electrostaff weapons crackling with energy, except they were moving wrong, jerking with uncoordinated motions, their programming obviously corrupted. They attacked the tactical droids manning the command stations with mechanical precision, their staffs smashing consoles and destroying the communication equipment. Grievous destroyed them within seconds, his 4 lightsabers cutting through the corrupted droids with brutal efficiency. But the damage was done. His command center was crippled, his communication network severed, and his tactical advantage eroded with each passing moment. Clever, Grievous hissed into the darkness. Very clever. But tricks and sabotage won't save you when we meet face to face, Hunter. I am still General Grievous. I have still killed hundreds of Jedi. And you? His voice dropped to a mechanical whisper, you are still just flesh and technology, and both can be broken. From the shadows beyond the shattered command center, Batman's voice emerged, cold, mechanical, filtered through his cowl's modulator. Then break me. If you can. Grievous spun toward the sound, all 4 lightsabers raised, but there was nothing there. Just shadows and smoke and the fading echo of that inhuman voice. Outside the fortress, Obi-Wan and Anakin felt the disturbance through the Force, not from the operative, who remained invisible to their senses, but from the waves of rage and frustration emanating from General Grievous. "It's working," Anakin observed with grudging admiration. Whatever this operative is doing, they're getting inside Grievous' head. Making him angry. Making him sloppy. And making him extremely dangerous, Obi-Wan countered. An enraged Grievous is unpredictable. He might do something catastrophic. He ignited his lightsaber, the blue blade humming in the toxic atmosphere. "We need to intervene before this escalates further. Are you ready?" Anakin ignited his own blade. "Master, I've been ready since we arrived." They moved toward the fortress's auxiliary entrance, using the Force to sense the layout and avoid the worst of the droid patrols. As Jedi, they could feel the building's emotional resonance. Fear, anger, and confusion swirling through the structure like a psychological storm. But still, that operative remained completely absent from the Force, a void moving through the chaos like death personified. They encountered their first resistance at the entrance, a squad of battle droids that Anakin dispatched with efficient lightsaber strikes while Obi-Wan used the Force to collapse part of the ceiling, blocking reinforcements. They pressed deeper, following the trail of disabled droids and sabotaged systems toward the fortress's heart. And then they heard it. A sound that made even Obi-Wan's disciplined heart skip a beat. The sound of General Grievous' mechanical lungs rattling with rage, followed by the distinctive hum of 4 lightsabers cutting through metal. A battle was happening somewhere ahead, brutal, fast, and utterly ruthless. "He's found the operative," Anakin said unnecessarily. They ran toward the sound, Force-enhanced speed carrying them through corridors thick with nerve gas and emergency lighting. And when they finally reached the fortress's central atrium, what they witnessed defied every expectation. General Grievous stood in the center of the massive chamber, his 4 lightsabers spinning in defensive patterns, his mechanical body moving with inhuman speed and precision. Around him lay the wreckage of 3 dozen battle droids, 2 spider droids, and what appeared to be half the atrium support columns. And fighting him, no, not fighting, hunting him, was a figure in dark armor who moved like liquid shadow through Grievous' defenses. Batman didn't carry a lightsaber. He wielded gadgets, explosives, and brutal close combat techniques that turned Grievous' superior reach and mechanical strength into liabilities. He threw devices that created electromagnetic pulses, fired grappling lines that tangled the cyborg's legs, and moved with acrobatic precision that made the Jedi's own enhanced mobility look clumsy. Grievous attacked with a 4-armed lightsaber combination that had killed dozens of Jedi Masters. Batman dodged with microseconds to spare, his cape billowing to confuse tracking sensors, his gauntlets deflecting glancing lightsaber strikes with some kind of reinforced plating. "You cannot defeat me!" Grievous roared, his upper arms spinning their lightsabers in a defensive wheel while his lower arms thrust toward Batman's center mass. Batman didn't respond verbally. Instead, he threw 3 batarangs in rapid succession. One struck Grievous' left photoreceptor, cracking the lens, another severed a hydraulic line in the cyborg's right knee, the third exploded in an electromagnetic pulse that disrupted Grievous' motor control for precisely 1.3 seconds. It was enough. Batman's grappling line wrapped around Grievous' upper right arm, and with impossible strength augmented by the grappling gun's motorized winch, Batman yanked the cyborg off balance. Grievous stumbled, his knee joint malfunctioning, and Batman was already inside his guard, too close for lightsabers to be effective. The combat shifted to brutal hand-to-hand. Batman's gauntlet fists struck with surgical precision. Impact points on Grievous mechanical joints, stress fractures in armor plating, vulnerable spots where organic components connected to cybernetic systems. Each strike was calculated, measured, designed to disable rather than destroy, but no less devastating for that restraint. Grievous fought back with mechanical ferocity, his superior strength evident as each blow that connected sent Batman skidding backward. But Batman was faster, smarter, and fighting with a level of tactical awareness that even Grievous combat programming couldn't predict. Obi-Wan and Anakin stood frozen, watching two apex predators tear into each other with a violence that transcended anything they'd witnessed in this war. "We have to stop this," Obi-Wan said, though his voice carried uncertainty. "Stop which one?" Anakin asked quietly. The battle had reached a critical threshold. And neither Jedi had lightsabers carved burning lines through the air as Batman moved through the deadly pattern with impossible precision, his cape snapping to create visual disruption while his body flowed between killing strikes with margins of error measured in millimeters. "Stand still!" Grievous roared, his mechanical frustration mounting with each failed attack. "Face me like a warrior." Batman's response came not in words but in action. A smoke pellet detonating at Grievous' feet, followed by 3 flashbang charges that overloaded the cyborg's optical sensors. Grievous stumbled backward, temporarily blind, his lightsaber spinning in defensive patterns to ward off attacks from any direction. But Batman wasn't attacking. He was positioning. The grappling line fired upward, catching on the atrium's damaged support structure. Batman ascended rapidly, drawing Grievous' attention upward just as Obi-Wan and Anakin moved into the chamber from opposite entrances, their lightsabers ignited and ready. Grievous' sensors cleared in time to register not one opponent but 3, the mysterious operative above, and 2 Jedi flanking his position. His mechanical mind calculated odds, assessed tactical situations, and reached a conclusion that made his organic brain scream with frustrated rage. He was trapped. "General Grievous," Obi-Wan called out, his voice carrying the diplomatic authority of a Jedi negotiator even in this combat scenario. "Surrender. You're outnumbered and your fortress is compromised. There's no tactical advantage to continuing this engagement." "I never surrender," Grievous snarled. "Especially not to Jedi, and whatever that creature is." Anakin's blade hummed with barely restrained eagerness. "Then we do this the hard way." But before anyone could move, Batman dropped from above with a device none of them recognized, a cylindrical charge that struck the atrium's floor and detonated not with fire or shrapnel, but with a directed electromagnetic pulse of such magnitude that every electronic system in the chamber died instantly. Grievous' cybernetic body seized, his motor controls scrambled by the EMP. His lightsabers deactivated, clattering to the ground as his mechanical hand spasmed. Even his respiratory system stuttered, the mechanical lungs failing to draw breath into his fragile organic organs. The Jedi's lightsabers survived, the elegant weapons were surprisingly resistant to electromagnetic interference, but the fortress itself went dark. Emergency lighting flickered and died. Backup power systems crashed. And in the sudden darkness, illuminated only by blue Jedi lightsaber glow, General Grievous collapsed to his knees. Batman landed silently beside the disabled cyborg, his white eye lenses glowing in the darkness like judgmental spirits. For 3 seconds, the atrium was frozen, Grievous struggling to reboot his systems, the Jedi uncertain whether to intervene, and Batman standing over his prey with absolute tactical dominance. "You're a monster," Batman said quietly, his mechanically filtered voice devoid of emotion. "You murdered Jedi. You terrorize systems. You've killed thousands in this war." He crouched beside Grievous, bringing his cowled face level with the cyborg's skull mask. "And you thought I was hunting you for sport. For challenge. For honor." Grievous' organic eyes blazed with hatred, his voice barely functioning through damaged vocabulators. "Then, why?" Because monsters need to be stopped. Batman stood, his cape settling around him like wings of judgment. Because innocent people die when creatures like you are allowed to operate unchecked. Because someone has to draw a line and say, this far, no further. He reached down and retrieved one of Grievous' lightsabers, the blue one, taken from a Jedi whose name was etched on the hilt, Master Crook. Batman examined it briefly, then tossed it to Obi-Wan, who caught it with the Force. Your trophies belong to the Jedi whose memory they dishonor, Batman stated. Your war crimes end tonight. You cannot stop. The Separatist alliance, Grievous managed through rebooting systems. I am not the only threat. I know, Batman replied. I've studied your intelligence networks. I know about Count Dooku. I know about the Sith Lords manipulating this war. I know about the political corruption in the Republic Senate. His gaze shifted to include Obi-Wan and Anakin. I know this war is being orchestrated by hidden hands for purposes beyond what anyone openly admits. Obi-Wan's expression tightened. What are you talking about? You're being used, Batman said bluntly. The Jedi. The Republic. Even the Separatists. All pawns in a larger game. He pulled a small data drive from his utility belt and tossed it to Obi-Wan. 3 weeks of intelligence gathering. Communications between Separatist leadership and an encrypted source inside the Republic. Troop movements that make no strategic sense unless both sides are being directed by the same ultimate authority. Financial trails linking Republic senators to Separatist corporate interests. Anakin stepped forward, his lightsaber still active. And we're supposed to just trust you? You show up from nowhere, operate outside all authority, and expect us to believe you've uncovered some massive conspiracy? I don't care if you believe me, Batman replied. I care about stopping the immediate threats. Grievous is one threat. Neutralized. But there are others, and they're using this war to accumulate power while everyone else bleeds. He looked directly at Anakin. You feel it. The imbalance. The manipulation. You know something is wrong with how this war is being conducted. Anakin's expression flickered, caught between denial and recognition. Obi-Wan deactivated his lightsaber and stepped forward carefully. Who are you? Where did you come from? And why have you inserted yourself into a galactic conflict that doesn't concern you? For a long moment, Batman was silent. Then, I'm someone who stops criminals. Where I came from doesn't matter, I'm here now. And this concerns me because innocent people are dying. His white lenses fixed on Obi-Wan. I've seen wars manipulated by hidden enemies before. I've watched good people used as pawns. I won't stand by while it happens again, even in a galaxy that isn't mine. Not your galaxy? Anakin seized on the phrasing. What does that mean? Before Batman could respond, Grievous systems finally rebooted enough for basic motor control. The cyborg lunged with surprising speed, reaching for Batman with mechanical hands designed to crush bone. Batman didn't flinch. His hand moved with practiced precision, attaching something to Grievous' neck joint, a small device that pulsed with blue energy. Grievous froze mid-attack, his entire body locked in place by the neural disruptor Batman had designed specifically for cybernetic enemies. No, impossible. I cannot move. Gotham taught me that everyone has weaknesses, Batman said quietly. Even monsters who think they're invincible. He looked at the Jedi. He's your prisoner now. Do with him what your justice system demands. But know this, he's one symptom of a much larger disease. And you? Obi-Wan asked. What will you do? What I always do. Hunt the next threat. Until this war ends or I find whoever's really orchestrating it. Batman moved toward the atrium's exit, his cape billowing in the toxic air currents. "Wait!" Anakin called out. "You can't just leave. We have questions. The Council will want to." "The Council doesn't dictate my actions," Batman interrupted. "Neither does the Senate, the Chancellor, or anyone else who thinks authority equals righteousness." He paused at the doorway. "But I'm not your enemy. When I find evidence of who's truly behind this war, I'll share it. Until then, stop Grievous crimes, protect your soldiers, and question everything you're told by those in power." "That sounds dangerously close to sedition," Obi-Wan observed. "It sounds like detective work," Batman corrected. "The kind that reveals uncomfortable truths." He glanced back one final time. "The Force might guide you, but it's made you complacent. You sense the war is wrong but take no action to investigate why. I don't have your powers. I only have my mind, my skills, and my refusal to accept easy answers." He activated a remote trigger. Throughout the fortress, the remaining charges Batman had planted began a controlled detonation sequence, not enough to destroy the structure, but enough to render it permanently uninhabitable. Grievous' trophy room, his meditation chamber, his command center, all systematically demolished. "What have you done?" Grievous screamed, his paralyzed body unable to stop the destruction. "Taken away your sanctuary," Batman replied. "So you'll never feel safe again. So every droid commander, every Separatist general, every being who profits from this war will know, someone is hunting you. Someone you can't see, can't track, can't escape. And when your crimes exceed what civilized justice will tolerate." His white lenses seemed to glow brighter in the darkness. "I'll be there." Then he was gone, disappearing into the fortress's collapsing infrastructure with the same impossible stealth that had allowed him to infiltrate in the first place. Anakin started to pursue, but Obi-Wan grabbed his arm. "Let him go. Master, we can't just." "He's right about one thing," Obi-Wan said quietly, staring at the data drive in his hand. "Something is very wrong with this war. And if this intelligence is accurate..." He trailed off, the implications too dangerous to voice aloud in Grievous' presence. Grievous, still paralyzed and forced to watch his fortress burn around him, experienced something he hadn't felt since his transformation from organic warrior to mechanical monster, genuine, existential fear. Not fear of death, he'd transcended that concern long ago. But fear of helplessness. Fear of prey status. Fear that somewhere in the darkness, something was hunting him with patience, intelligence, and determination he couldn't match. The bat had entered his nightmares. And nightmares, Grievous was learning, were far worse than any physical defeat. The Jedi Temple's High Council chamber existed in perpetual twilight, its circular design and tall windows creating an atmosphere of contemplative authority. But tonight, as Obi-Wan Kenobi stood before the assembled masters, the atmosphere crackled with tension that had nothing to do with architecture and everything to do with the intelligence he'd brought back from Vasek. Master Yoda sat in his chair, ancient eyes closed, while the data drive's contents played across holographic displays. Master Windu stood with arms crossed, his expression growing darker with each revelation. The other council members maintained various states of disciplined concern as encrypted communications, financial records, and troop movement analyses scrolled past. "Impossible," Master Windu finally said, though his tone suggested he knew it wasn't. "These communications indicate coordination between Separatist leadership and Republic officials. Between corporate interests on both sides. Between Count Dooku and someone very high in the Republic government," Obi-Wan finished quietly. "The encryption is sophisticated, military-grade on both sides, but the pattern is undeniable. Strategic decisions that benefit both the Separatist war machine and Republic military-industrial contractors. Battles that accomplish little except generating casualties and resource expenditure. It's as if the war itself is the goal, Anakin interjected from where he stood beside his former master. Not victory for either side, but perpetual conflict that serves some hidden purpose. Master Plo Koon leaned forward. And this intelligence came from the operative? The same being who captured General Grievous and escaped Republic custody? Grievous didn't escape, Obi-Wan corrected. We have him in custody on Coruscant, though his neural disruptor won't remain effective indefinitely. But yes, this intelligence was provided by the operative before they disappeared. Along with... He hesitated, with some disturbing observations about the Jedi Order's role in this war. The silence that followed carried weight. Master Yoda finally opened his eyes. Speak freely, you must. Concerns of this mysterious warrior, what are they? Obi-Wan took a breath. They suggested we've become complacent. That we sense something wrong but refuse to investigate because it would require questioning the Republic's authority, the Chancellor's decisions, and our own role as generals in a war that contradicts our peacekeeping mandate. He met each council member's gaze. And masters. I fear they may be correct. This operative undermines our authority, Windu stated firmly. They operate outside Republic law, refuse Jedi oversight, and now they're planting seeds of doubt about our mission. This is exactly the kind of divisive thinking that might save the Republic, Anakin interrupted, earning sharp looks from several masters. With respect, Master Windu, this operative has accomplished what we failed to do. They neutralized General Grievous, something entire Jedi strike teams couldn't achieve. They've uncovered intelligence our Republic intelligence agents missed. And they're asking questions we should have been asking from the beginning. The beginning of what, young Skywalker? Master Windu challenged. The beginning of noticing that this war makes no strategic sense, Anakin replied with uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. We win battles but never achieve decisive victory. Separatist forces retreat strategically, preserving their strength. Resources are exhausted on both sides while the actual conflict zones remain stalemated. It's almost as if someone is orchestrating the war to continue indefinitely, Obi-Wan finished. Exactly what the operative suggested. And if that's true, then both sides are being manipulated. Which means the Sith Lord we know exists, the master that Dooku serves, might be positioned within the Republic itself. The council chamber erupted in controlled debate. Some masters dismissed the idea as paranoid speculation. Others recognized the patterns Obi-Wan described. But all of them felt the disturbance in the Force, that sensation that had been growing throughout the war, the feeling that something fundamental was corrupted beneath the surface of galactic politics. Master Yoda raised his Jimmer stick, calling for silence. Investigate this, we must. But carefully. Powerful enemies, we may discover. And this operative. His ancient face creased with thought. Trust them, should we? They saved Jedi lives, Obi-Wan pointed out. They provided intelligence without demanding anything in return. They could have killed Grievous but chose capture instead, respecting our justice system even while operating outside it. Their methods are brutal but restrained. Effective but not murderous. He paused. I believe they're genuinely trying to stop the war's true architects, whoever those might be. Or they're trying to destabilize both sides for their own purposes, Windu countered. We know nothing about their origins, their true capabilities, or their ultimate goals. For all we know, they could be working for an entirely different faction we haven't even identified. Anakin shook his head. I watched them fight Grievous. They weren't trying to destabilize anything, they were hunting a war criminal with single-minded determination. And when they had the chance to kill him, to kill us, to do anything except provide intelligence and leave, they chose restraint. That's not the behavior of someone seeking chaos. Perhaps, Yoda mused. Or perhaps, chaos they seek to prevent. Different from us, this warrior is. Bound by different code. Follow different path. But same destination, perhasted with a slight smirk. Follow the pattern of their crimes, or in this case, their interventions. They're hunting war criminals and investigating the conspiracy behind the Clone Wars. So we identify the next logical target and wait for them to appear. Windu considered this. Count Dooku. If the operative truly believes the Separatist leadership answers to a hidden master, they'll eventually move against Dooku himself. And when they do, Obi-Wan said quietly, we'll be there. Not to capture them, but to offer alliance. Because if their intelligence is accurate, the Jedi Order needs allies who can operate outside our limitations. The Council debated further, but the decision was made. Obi-Wan would continue investigating the operative while simultaneously following up on the intelligence provided. Anakin would assist, though several masters expressed concern about his sympathy for the vigilante's methods. As they left the council chamber, Anakin spoke quietly, "You know what bothers me most about all this, Master?" "What's that?" "The operative told us we're being manipulated. They told us to question authority. They told us the war serves hidden purposes." Anakin's expression was troubled. Those are exactly the kinds of things a Sith might say to turn Jedi against the Republic. But they also happen to be exactly the kinds of things a genuine ally might say if they discovered an actual conspiracy. He paused. "How do we tell the difference?" Obi-Wan placed a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder. "That, Anakin, is precisely why we need to find them again. Not as adversaries, but as, what did Master Yoda suggest? Different paths toward the same destination." He looked out over Coruscant's endless cityscape. "Somewhere out there, a warrior from another reality is fighting our war with methods we can't condone but can't entirely condemn. And whether we like it or not, they may be the only being in this galaxy asking the right questions." Far below Coruscant's gleaming upper levels, in the dark industrial zones where few citizens ventured, Batman sat in his temporary base analyzing holographic data streams. The cave he'd discovered, an actual cave, remarkably, beneath the planet-wide city, provided sufficient space for his equipment and enough isolation to work without interruption. Alfred would have been pleased. "Master Bruce always finds a cave," he'd have said with dry amusement. The data scrolling across his displays came from 100 sources, intercepted Separatist communications, Republic military databases he'd infiltrated, financial records pulled from banking networks, and the personal communications of various senators and corporate leaders. 3 weeks of investigation had revealed a pattern that made Gotham's corruption look like amateur hour. The Clone Wars were being orchestrated. Both sides answered to hidden masters. And at the center of it all was someone very close to the Republic's seat of power, someone with access to Senate decisions, military strategies, and the trust of the Jedi Council. Chancellor Palpatine. Batman didn't have definitive proof yet. The evidence was circumstantial, the connections indirect, the conspiracy so perfectly orchestrated that any single piece of evidence could be explained away. But the pattern was there. The same pattern he'd seen 1,000 times in Gotham when corrupt officials played both sides against the middle. Palpatine had too much influence over military decisions. His emergency powers had expanded far beyond constitutional limits. He'd positioned himself perfectly to benefit from the war's continuation while appearing to delis couldn't protect him. It required time Batman didn't have if the war continued escalating. His cowl's proximity alarm chimed softly. Someone was approaching his position, not droids, not ordinary citizens, but 2 Force-sensitive signatures he recognized from Vasek. The Jedi had found him. Batman considered his options. He could disappear again, maintain operational security, keep his investigation completely separate from the Jedi's politically constrained efforts. Or he could take a calculated risk and determine if these warrior monks were genuinely interested in truth or just protecting their institutional authority. He'd worked with heroes before. Some had earned his trust. Others had proven to be liabilities. The Jedi seemed honorable but constrained by their connection to a corrupt Republic government. The question was, could they be trusted with what he'd discovered? Or would they dismiss it as paranoid conspiracy theory from an outsider who didn't understand galactic politics? Batman made his decision. He didn't deactivate his security systems or disable his escape routes, but he didn't disappear either. Instead, he waited in the darkness of his cave, surrounded by evidence of conspiracy and corruption, as two Jedi who thought they were hunting him walked directly into his base. Sometimes the best way to understand potential allies was to see how they reacted to uncomfortable truths. And truth, Batman had learned long ago, was the most uncomfortable thing anyone could be forced to face. P.S. We share. He looked at Obi-Wan. Find them again, you must. Speak with them. Understand their purpose. And determine if ally or threat they truly are. Master Yoda, Obi-Wan said carefully, they don't want to be found. They operate in complete stealth, hide from the Force itself, and disappear when engagement becomes inconvenient. How am I supposed to locate someone who exists as a void in our primary sense? The same way any detective finds an elusive suspect, Anakin Sug. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker descended into Coruscant sublevels with the kind of methodical caution usually reserved for Sith temples. The Force guided them, not toward a specific presence, since the operative remained invisible to their senses, but toward an absence, a void in the Force's natural flow that suggested something profoundly unusual occupied the space ahead. This feels wrong, Anakin muttered as they navigated through abandoned industrial tunnels. Like a wound in the Force, but not dark side. Just empty. Indeed, Obi-Wan agreed, his hand resting on his lightsaber hilt. Whatever technology or ability allows this operative to hide from us creates a genuine blind spot in our awareness. It's deeply unsettling. They rounded a corner and stopped. Before them was something neither Jedi expected, a cave. An actual natural cave system beneath Coruscant's endless urban sprawl, preserved somehow through millennia of planetary development. And inside that cave, illuminated by the blue glow of holographic displays and advanced technology, stood the operative they'd been hunting. Batman didn't turn to face them. He continued studying his displays, his cape pooling around him like liquid shadow, his white eye lenses reflecting data streams. You followed the pattern of my investigations, Batman said without preamble. Intercepted communications between this location and Republic databases. Credit transfers traced back to equipment purchases. Logical deduction. He finally turned, and his cowl's technological presence seemed to absorb the cave's shadows. Either you're better detectives than I gave you credit for, or I allowed you to find me. Which is it? Anakin challenged, his hand moving toward his lightsaber. Both. Batman's gaze shifted to Obi-Wan. You brought the data drive to your council. They're investigating. But they're also hesitating because the implications are too dangerous to confront directly. Typical institutional behavior when corruption reaches the highest levels. Obi-Wan stepped forward carefully. You seem to have strong opinions about institutions you know nothing about. I know everything about institutions, Batman corrected. I've spent years fighting corruption in organizations that claim to serve justice while protecting the criminals within their own ranks. Police departments. Government agencies. Even groups of heroes who thought their good intentions exempted them from accountability. His white lenses fixed on Obi-Wan with unnerving intensity. Your Jedi Order is no different. You sense something wrong, but you won't investigate because it might require you to admit you've been complicit in prolonging this war. Anakin's hand closed around his lightsaber hilt. You have no right to judge us. You know nothing about. I know you're generals in a war that contradicts your peacekeeping philosophy, Batman interrupted. I know you command armies of clone soldiers who have no choice in their servitude. I know you defer to political authority even when that authority makes decisions that cost lives. And I know you're about to make a choice, dismiss what I've discovered because it's uncomfortable, or face the possibility that everything you fought for serves a hidden enemy's agenda. The cave fell silent except for the hum of holographic projectors. Obi-Wan deactivated his ready stance. Show us. Batman gestured to the displays. 3 weeks of investigation. Financial records showing Separatist corporate interests secretly funding Republic military contractors. Communication intercepts revealing coordinated strategic withdrawals on both sides. Banking transactions linking Republic senators to Trade Federation assets. And at the center of it all, he brought up a holographic image of Chancellor Palpatine, the one being with access to all military strategies, all Senate decisions, all Jedi deployments. That's circumstantial at best, Obi-Wan protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Circumstantial evidence is still evidence when the pattern is clear, Batman countered. Your Chancellor has accumulated more emergency powers during this war than any Republic leader in history. He's positioned himself to benefit from the conflict's continuation regardless of which side wins. And every attempt at peace negotiations mysteriously fails despite his public support for ending the war. Anakin studied the data streams, his mechanical hand clenching unconsciously. This doesn't prove he's a Sith Lord. It proves he's a politician who's adapted to wartime conditions. Maybe he's just pragmatic. Or maybe he's exactly what I think he is. The architect of this entire war, playing both sides against each other for purposes we haven't fully uncovered. Batman pulled up another series of files. I've also been tracking your Jedi casualties. The pattern is deliberate. Masters who might question the war's direction die in strategic engagements. Generals who advocate for peace negotiations are reassigned to high-casualty zones. It's systematic elimination of voices that might expose the conspiracy. Obi-Wan felt the force shift around him as he considered the implications. If what you're suggesting is true, if Palpatine is the Sith Lord Dooku serves, then the entire Republic government is compromised. The Senate, the military, even the Jedi Council's relationship with political authority. Moving against him would require evidence so overwhelming that. That's why I'm building the case, Batman finished. I'm not a Force user. I can't sense truth through mystical energy. I need hard evidence that will survive legal scrutiny. Financial records. Communications. Video evidence. Testimony from witnesses who can't be dismissed as conspiracy theorists. And when you have this evidence? Anakin asked. What then? You expect the Senate to arrest their own chancellor based on intelligence gathered by an outsider who won't even tell us where they came from? Batman was quiet for a moment. I expect you to do what your order claims to stand for. Protect the innocent from those who would exploit them. Even if that means confronting someone you've trusted. Even if it means admitting you were wrong. We're Jedi, Obi-Wan said with quiet dignity. We don't make decisions based on pride or institutional loyalty. We follow the Force, and the Force guides us toward truth. Does it? Batman challenged. Or does it guide you toward what you want to believe is true? Because from where I stand, your Force hasn't shown you that your peacekeepers have become soldiers, your democracy has become autocracy, and your war has become exactly what someone designed it to be, endless, profitable, and destructive. Anakin stepped forward aggressively. You don't understand the Force. You can't sense what we sense. You're just a detective playing at understanding galactic politics. You're right, Batman admitted. I don't understand the Force. But I understand crime. I understand corruption. I understand how power corrupts and how absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I understand that sometimes the greatest evil comes from those who claim to serve the greater good. His voice softened slightly. I'm not your enemy. I'm trying to stop the same war you're fighting. But I won't do it by following rules that were designed to protect the guilty. Obi-Wan studied the operative. This impossible being from another reality who fought like a Jedi but thought like a criminal investigator. What do you need from us? Access, Batman replied. Your council has connections I can't duplicate. Intelligence networks. Political relationships. The ability to investigate senators and military officials without triggering immediate security responses. I can operate in the shadows, but eventually this evidence needs to reach people who can act on it legally. And if we refuse? Anakin challenged. Then I continue alone, Batman said simply. I've fought conspiracies before without institutional support. It's slower, more dangerous, but ultimately effective. He paused. But innocent people die while I work alone. Clone troopers. Civilians. Jedi who trust their leaders. If you help, we can end this faster. Obi-Wan and Anakin exchanged glances, communicating through their Force bond in ways Batman couldn't perceive. Finally, Obi-Wan spoke. We'll take this to Master Yoda. He's the most likely to understand the necessity of investigating even the most uncomfortable possibilities. But you need to understand, if we discover you're manipulating us, if your intelligence proves false or if you're serving some agenda we haven't identified. You'll hunt me, Batman finished. I know. I'd expect nothing less. He pulled a secure comlink from his utility belt and tossed it to Obi-Wan. Encrypted channel. Use it when you're ready to compare intelligence. Or when you finally admit I'm right about Palpatine. Confidence bordering on arrogance, Anakin observed. Experience bordering on certainty, Batman corrected. I've seen this pattern before. The charismatic leader who accumulates emergency powers. The war that never quite ends. The systematic elimination of opposition voices. It always ends the same way, with tyranny wearing the mask of necessity. Obi-Wan pocketed the comlink. One more question. Who are you? Really? Not what you do or why you're here, but what are you? Batman considered the question. In another lifetime, he might have said, I'm vengeance, or I'm the night, or any of the theatrical declarations he'd used to intimidate Gotham's criminals. But these Jedi deserved something closer to truth. I'm someone who watched his parents die because evil was allowed to operate unchecked, Batman said quietly. I'm someone who spent his life learning to fight monsters because waiting for institutional justice meant more innocent people would suffer. I'm someone who crossed dimensional barriers to end up in your galaxy, and found the same patterns of corruption, manipulation, and systematic evil I fought in my own world. His white lenses seemed to glow brighter. I'm Batman. And whether you believe me or not, whether you help me or not, I'm going to stop whoever's orchestrating this war. Even if I have to tear down your entire republic to do it. The words hung in the cave's darkness like a declaration of war against reality itself. Anakin's hand tightened on his lightsaber. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise, Batman replied. To the innocent people dying in this conflict. To the Jedi being murdered by hidden enemies. To every clone trooper bred for war without choice. I promise I won't stop until the architects of this nightmare face justice. Obi-Wan felt the Force swirl around them, not through the operative himself, but in response to the absolute conviction radiating from this impossible warrior. Then may the Force be with you, he said formally. Because what you're attempting is either the most heroic or most destructive thing anyone could undertake in this galaxy. I've been called both, Batman acknowledged. Usually by the same people at different times. The Jedi departed, leaving Batman alone in his cave with evidence of conspiracy and the weight of a promise he intended to keep. As their Force signatures faded into Coruscant's endless urban sprawl, Batman returned to his investigation. Somewhere in the Republic's gleaming towers, Chancellor Palpatine conducted Senate business, manipulated Jedi strategies, and orchestrated a war designed to transform democracy into dictatorship. But now he had a new variable to account for. A detective from another reality who didn't respect political authority, didn't fear the Force, and wouldn't stop until the truth was exposed. The Clone Wars had brought many warriors to prominence. Jedi generals, Sith lords, clone commanders, and droid generals. But none of them were prepared for what happened when a detective who thought like a criminal but fought like a hero decided their entire conflict was evidence in a case he intended to solve. General Grievous languished in Republic custody, his nightmares haunted by a dark figure who had stripped away his invincibility. Count Dooku meditated in his fortress, sensing through the dark side that something had changed in the war's fundamental nature. And Chancellor Palpatine, playing his role as concerned leader while secretly orchestrating galactic transformation, felt the first whisper of concern that his perfect plan might have developed an unpredictable flaw. The Bat had entered their galaxy. And monsters, whether they wielded lightsabers, commanded armies, or manipulated governments, were about to learn that some hunters couldn't be escaped, couldn't be defeated, and wouldn't stop until justice was served. The war continued. The conspiracy deepened. And in the shadows of Coruscant's endless night, Batman prepared for the next phase of his investigation, proving that the Republic's greatest enemy wasn't the Separatist alliance. It was the man they'd trusted to save them from it. The galaxy far, far away had witnessed countless wars, legendary heroes, and dark villains who shaped the fate of trillions. But none of those conflicts had prepared it for the arrival of something from beyond its dimensional boundaries, a detective who thought in patterns, fought with technology, and refused to accept that some evils were too powerful to challenge. Batman's hunt for General Grievous had ended with the cyborg's capture, but the larger war continued. The evidence he'd gathered pointed toward a conspiracy at the highest levels of Republic government, with Chancellor Palpatine positioned perfectly to benefit from the Clone Wars' continuation. The Jedi Council, though skeptical, had begun their own investigation based on his intelligence. And across the galaxy, those who profited from endless conflict felt the first stirrings of unease. The dark side whispered warnings to those who could hear it. Something had changed. Something that existed outside the Force's infinite web had entered their carefully orchestrated plans. And while Sith lords plotted, Jedi generals fought, and clone armies marched toward destinies programmed into their genes, a figure in dark armor moved through the shadows with singular purpose. In Gotham, Batman had waged a one-man war against crime for years, proving that determination and preparation could triumph over seemingly insurmountable odds. In this galaxy, he would prove the same principle on a scale that would either save countless lives or destabilize the fragile balance that kept civilization from complete collapse. General Grievous had learned that monsters could be hunted. The Jedi had learned that some truths required looking beyond the Force's guidance. And soon, very soon, Chancellor Palpatine would learn what happened when someone investigated the perfect crime with the skills to recognize patterns others missed. The Clone Wars would continue. The conspiracy would deepen. And Batman would do what he'd always done, fight until the case was solved, the guilty were held accountable, and the innocent were protected, no matter how many star systems he had to cross, how many armies he had to infiltrate, or how many powerful beings he had to expose. Because some promises transcended galaxies. And the promise Batman had made in a Gotham alley when his parents fell, that promise to wage war on all criminals, in all places, at all times, didn't come with exceptions for Sith lords or corrupt chancellors. The galaxy far, far away had been forever changed by the arrival of a warrior from beyond the stars. Whether that change would lead to salvation or catastrophe, only time would tell. But one thing was certain. The shadows had teeth now, and those teeth were closing around the throats of everyone who thought darkness belonged to them.